Welcome, everybody. Today we are jumping into a brand new deep dive, and we are entering the Book of Numbers, which I feel like I have to address right away because when many people hear the title Numbers, their first thought is probably, is this mainly a book about counting people? It sounds like a math textbook.
Right, or
And
or a dry ledger.
yeah, exactly. Like reading the terms and conditions on a software update or something. You kind of scroll as fast as you can to get to the good stories at the bottom.
It practically advertises itself as a spreadsheet. I mean, English title numbers, it makes it super easy to see why someone who is familiar with the big miraculous events of the Exodus might just want to gloss over the logistics that follow.
Yeah, because if you grew up around this text, you probably know the highlight reel.
Right.
You know, the 12 spies, the talking donkey, the bronze snake on a pole.
Hmm.
But let's be honest, when was the last time you actually sat down and read the whole thing? We skim those long, repetitive lists of names and the census data and the tribal arrangements.
Well, and that's the thing. But Numbers is actually one of the most relatable books in the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
It tells the story of people who had already been redeemed by God, yet they still had to learn faith and obedience in this harsh environment. And again, their unbelief is exposed.
So let's unpack this, because the mission of our deep dive today into this source material is to completely flip that script on what we think this text is about. We are looking at a text written by Moses back in the 15th century BC, and our sources reveal that those seemingly dry structural elements are actually the key to understanding this gripping 40-year wilderness survival story.
Yeah, it really is. It's a profound look at human failure, divine faithfulness, and honestly, what really happens when the honeymoon phase of newfound freedom just sort of wears off.
Yeah, that honeymoon phase does not last long at all.
No, it doesn't. And that framing completely changes the approach to the text. I think it helps to look at the original Hebrew title of the book, which actually isn't Numbers at all.
Oh,
Yeah, the Hebrew title is Bamidbar, which literally translates to in the wilderness.
in the wilderness. Okay, that sounds so much more like an epic survival movie than a census report.
It truly is a survival epic.
Yeah.
Just to give us the geographic and chronological scope here, we are looking at a journey that begins at Mount Sinai, which is shortly after the people of Israel escape slavery in Egypt,
Right.
and it ends on the plains of Moab, right on the edge of the Promised Land. So chronologically, this covers nearly 4 decades.
Wow, 40 years.
Yeah, and the core theme of the text isn't the travel itinerary itself. It's about what happens when redeemed people hit the harsh, unyielding reality of the desert.
Because the wilderness is more than just a geographical location, right? It's also a school for the soul.
Exactly. The wilderness reveals what a person truly trusts. The wilderness is not the destination. It is the place where God shapes his people and prepares them to enter his promise.
I love that. But before you can go on a massive 40-year trek, you have to pack. You have to organize. You don't just walk out into the desert. So the text moves from the premise of being rescued right to the literal starting line of the journey.
And this is exactly where the English title comes from. The book begins with the first census.
Okay, so the numbers.
Right, the numbers. They are counting the old generation,
Mhm.
taking stock of their manpower and their resources. It's about establishing a highly specific, organized arrangement for the camp as they prepare to move this massive population. And we're talking likely over 1 million people
Over 1 million people moving through a desert.
moving through a very hostile environment.
That is wild. And when our sources say exact, they mean hyper-specific.
Yeah.
The text maps it out like an ancient city planner. It says the tribe of Judah is stationed on the east, Reuben is on the south, Ephraim is on the west, and Dan is on the north. So it's this massive coordinated grid.
Yes, a massive grid.
But I have to ask you, was this just ancient military strategy? I get that you need serious crowd control to move that many people without it just devolving into a completely chaotic mob. But was this layout strictly functional, or was it meant to teach them something deeper?
Well, what's fascinating here is that the organization isn't just logistical, it is profoundly theological.
How so?
To understand it, you have to look at the physical center of the camp. Right in the middle of all those tribes, surrounded on all 4 sides, is the tabernacle.
Ah, the dwelling place of God.
Exactly. The physical representation of his presence among them. God is establishing order out of chaos before they even take their first step. And he positions the tribe of Levi, the priests, as a kind of buffer zone immediately surrounding the tabernacle.
Right.
And then the other 12 tribes radiate outward from there. So the visual layout forces a daily realization. God's presence is literally at the center of their lives. Every single time a person stepped out of their tent in the morning, no matter which tribe they belonged to, they faced the center. They faced the tabernacle.
Oh, wow. I really love that image. It's like the hub of a wheel, and all the spokes are pointing inward to the same source.
That's a great way to picture it.
But organization is beautiful, but it only goes so far because order doesn't prevent fear. Because as soon as they pack up and they hit the edge of the promised land, all that beautiful geometric order just shatters completely.
It does. The narrative takes a very dark turn pretty quickly. The initial organization gives way to escalating rebellion and complaining.
Yeah, they complain a lot.
They really do.
Yeah.
And it reaches its absolute peak, or perhaps its lowest valley, you could say, at a place called Kadesh Barnea.
Kadesh Barnea.
Right?
Which is like the massive turning point in the entire source material.
Right.
They are right on the border of Canaan. The land they've been promised for generations is literally steps away. So they send in a reconnaissance team, right? The 12 skies.
Yes. 12 leaders,
Yes.
one from each tribe, and they go in to scout the land for 40 days. Now, keep in mind, they are all looking at the exact same geography.
Same exact place.
Right. They are looking at the exact same fortified cities, the exact same agricultural abundance, and the exact same inhabitants, which included some physically massive people groups.
Right, like the giants we hear about in Sunday school.
Exactly. So they all see this. But they come back to the camp with two completely different realities.
And here's where it gets really interesting to me. It's like the ultimate ancient example of confirmation bias. You have 10 of these spies who come back and essentially say, you guys, there are giants in the land. The cities are too big. We are like grasshoppers compared to them, and we are going to be completely wiped out.
Yeah, their focus is entirely on the obstacles.
Entirely. But then you have two spies, Joshua and Caleb, and they look at the exact same land, the exact same giants, and they say, let's go right now and take it.
Because their focus wasn't on the giants, their focus was on God. The 10 fearful spies, they let their unbelief dictate their reality, and that leads to total panic and despair in the camp. The people actually start talking about appointing a new leader to take them all the way back to slavery in Egypt.
Back to Egypt. I mean, it's such a profound psychological mirror for us today. If you look for giants, you will always find a reason to fail. But if you look for God, you find a reason to advance.
Yeah.
I mean, they were literally standing there holding this massive cluster of grapes they brought back to the land. Like, they're holding the physical proof of the promise right in their hands, and they still chose to panic.
It's heartbreaking. And this raises a really important question about how faith operates in the face of very real difficulties.
Right.
Because faith doesn't deny the existence of the giants. Joshua and Caleb saw the same thick walls and the same formidable armies. But faith factors God into the equation.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't look at the obstacle in isolation. And the core scripture of this entire text, Numbers 14, verse 8, it sums this up perfectly. Joshua and Caleb were standing before this completely panicked crowd, and they say, if the Lord delights in us, he will lead us into that land and give it to us.
So it's not about their military might at all. It's entirely about God's faithfulness.
Exactly. But the crowd doesn't listen to them. They actually threaten to stone Joshua and Caleb right there on the spot.
Which is crazy. And this collective unbelief has a devastating consequence. It halts their progress entirely. God essentially says, you don't believe I can bring you in, then you won't go in.
Yeah, that's exactly what happens.
But wait, I have to ask this, because 40 years in the desert just because they panicked once? I mean, that sounds incredibly harsh, almost vindictive.
Now,
how do we square that with a faithful God? Because we're talking about a death sentence in the wilderness for an entire generation over one bad reconnaissance report.
I completely understand why it feels that way. But it wasn't just a momentary lapse in courage.
Okay.
The panic at Kadesh Barnea was the culmination of a deeply ingrained slave mindset. God had performed miracle after miracle. I mean, the plagues, parting the Red Sea, providing food from the sky.
Right, massive, unquestionable miracles.
Yes. And yet their default response was continually, we should go back to Egypt. You know the saying, you can take the people out of slavery in a few days, but taking the slavery out of the people takes much longer.
Wow, yeah. That really puts it in perspective.
That generation was psychologically incapable of stepping into the freedom of the promised land because they continually refused to trust the one who was giving it to them.
So the 40-year delay wasn't just this arbitrary punishment.
No, not at all. It was the necessary time for that slave mindset to literally die off, making room for a generation that would actually trust God.
I see. So the wilderness stops being just a place they pass through on the way to somewhere better, and it becomes this grueling school for the soul.
Yes, a school of discipline. The older generation had the promise, but their persistent unbelief cost them the inheritance. We see the messy reality of trying to survive in a barren landscape and the constant friction that creates.
And speaking of friction, one of the primary things they complain about in this school of discipline is the manna.
Oh yes, the manna.
For anyone unfamiliar, manna was this miraculous bread-like substance that God provided every single morning to keep them from starving in the desert.
Right.
And the rules for it were super strict. Gather only what you need for today, don't hoard it, or it will rot and breed maggots, which is gross. But you would think that free, miraculous food falling from heaven would be a cause for constant celebration.
Well, initially, it was. But day after day, year after year, the miraculous became mundane. The daily gathering requirement forced a daily dependence on God. They couldn't stockpile security for themselves
They had to trust him for tomorrow's breakfast.
every single day. And the people just grew tired of the provision. They started romanticizing the food they had back in Egypt, conveniently forgetting the brutal slavery that came with the fish and the melons and the cucumbers.
It's wild how memory works when you're uncomfortable.
Exactly. Complaining about the manna wasn't a culinary critique. It was a profound rejection of God's daily provision. It was them essentially saying, what you're giving us is not good enough.
And that deep dissatisfaction breeds full-on mutiny. Like we see Korah's rebellion, where a group of leaders rise up to challenge Moses and Aaron's authority. They basically argue, hey, everyone is holy, so why do Moses and Aaron get to be in charge?
Right. And what's interesting is that Korah was actually a Levite himself. He was a cousin of Moses and Aaron.
Oh, I didn't realize they were related. So this is family drama, too.
Oh, yeah. Deep family drama. He already had a highly privileged role in caring for the tabernacle, but it wasn't enough for him. He wanted the high priesthood.
Wow.
So it was this internal family power grab dressed up as populist theology. It's a direct challenge to the order God established back at the beginning of the journey.
The order with the tabernacle at the center.
Exactly. And God firmly shuts it down. The earth literally opens up and swallows the leaders of the rebellion.
Just terrifying.
It is terrifying. But God doesn't just stop at judgment. He provides a visual confirmation of his chosen leadership to settle the matter once and for all. He commands the leaders of each tribe to bring a wooden staff. And overnight, Aaron's staff miraculously sprouts blossoms and ripe almonds.
See, I have always wondered about this detail. Why almonds, though? I mean, of all the things a dead piece of wood could grow, why specifically almonds?
It's such a great detail. In ancient Hebrew culture, the almond tree is highly significant because it's the first tree to blossom in the spring.
Okay.
And the Hebrew word for almond sounds very similar to the Hebrew word for watching or hastening.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so it was this cultural symbol that God is actively watching over his word to fulfill it. By making Aaron's staff sprout almonds, God wasn't just doing some magic trick. He was communicating in their own cultural language that he is actively watching over the priesthood he established.
That is amazing.
It was definitive proof, meant to put a final end to the deadly grumbling about leadership.
So God uses that blossoming staff to visually prove his authority. But later on, he uses a very different visual object, not to prove authority, but to test their obedience.
Right, the bronze servant.
Yeah, and I have to admit, as a modern reader, it is a completely baffling story. So the people are complaining yet again. And as a form of discipline, venomous snakes are sent into the camp. People are getting bitten. It's a massive crisis.
Right.
Moses prays, and God tells him to make a bronze snake, put it on a high pole, and anyone who looks at it will live. I mean, it sounds like a weird magic trick, to be honest. Why would looking at a bronze serpent heal a snake bite? And why use the exact symbol of their discipline, the very thing causing their pain and death, as the vehicle for their salvation?
It is a shocking image for sure. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, it is actually one of those profound moments in the text.
How so?
Because God isn't giving them a magic potion or some medical antidote.
Yeah.
He is requiring a specific act of faith. They have to acknowledge their perilous situation, which is represented by the snake on the pole, and trust that God's provided method will heal them.
Okay.
The instruction is incredibly simple, but it requires total submission. Just look and live.
It is an exercise in trusting the instructions, even when they don't make logical or medical sense to the person who is in pain. Like, you have to overcome your basic instinct to look away from the terrifying thing and instead look directly at what God has provided.
Exactly. And this moment echoes far beyond the wilderness. Centuries later, in the Gospel of John, Jesus directly references this exact event.
Right, really?
Yes, he says, just as Moses lifted up the snake in the wilderness, so the Son of Man must be lifted up, that everyone who believes may have eternal life in him.
Oh, wow. So God provides the ultimate cure for the very discipline he allowed.
Yes, the bronze serpent is a direct foreshadowing of the gospel.
That completely reframes it from this weird desert anecdote to a cornerstone of theology.
It really does.
So while the Israelites are busy imploding from the inside with snakes and rebellions and all this complaining, a completely different kind of threat is brewing just over the horizon. The text just shifts perspective entirely, leaving the Israelite camp to focus on a foreign king named Balak and this diviner named Balaam.
Right. Balak is the king of Moab, and he is terrified of this massive Israelite camp just sitting right there on his borders. So he decides he needs to destroy them, but he doesn't start by sending an army.
Which is strange to us today.
Very strange. He hires Balaam, who is essentially a spiritual gun for hire, to curse the Israelites.
And this is where understanding the cultural mechanics is so incredibly helpful for us, because why would a king spend a fortune hiring a diviner to just speak words over a hill instead of just buying more swords and chariots for his army?
Well, in the ancient Near East, spiritual warfare was believed to be a necessary prerequisite to physical warfare.
Okay.
You didn't just attack an enemy army, you had to defeat their local gods first.
Ah, so it's a cosmic battle first.
Exactly. Balak believes he can manipulate the divine realm through Balaam's curses to strip away Israel's spiritual protection. Only then would they actually be vulnerable to a military strike. So he takes Balaam up to these high vantage points on the mountains, looking down on the geometric camp of Israel, and tells him to pronounce a curse.
Which introduces one of the most famous and definitely bizarre moments in the text.
The donkey.
The talking donkey. So Balaam is riding his donkey on the way to do this job, and the donkey keeps veering off the road because she sees an angel of the Lord blocking the path with a drawn sword, but Balaam can't see it, so he beats the donkey.
Right.
And eventually, God actually opens the donkey's mouth to speak and rebuke him. I mean, the irony is just dripping from the page here. This world-renowned seer is completely blind to spiritual reality, while his pack animal sees it perfectly.
It perfectly sets up the total futility of Balaam's mission.
Yeah, it really does.
Because when he finally gets to the mountain, every single time Balaam opens his mouth, a blessing comes out instead of a curse. He tries multiple times from different mountains, and he literally cannot curse them. He finally just throws his hands up and says, "How can I curse those whom God has not cursed?"
Wow.
And think about the contrast here. Down in the valley, inside the camp, the Israelites are likely doing exactly what they've been doing for 40 years. Complaining about the manna, grumbling about the heat, struggling with their own failures. They're completely unaware that on a hill nearby, God is actively defending them from being spiritually destroyed.
That gives me chills, because their bad attitude didn't cancel out God's covenant with them. Human curses cannot overturn God's blessing.
It highlights the core theme of the entire book. God remains faithful even when the people fail. His protection does not hinge on their perfection.
Thank goodness for that.
Truly. Israel is deeply flawed, they are rebellious, and they are definitely experiencing the consequences of their unbelief in the desert, but they are still his people.
Yeah, they are still his. But eventually, the 40 years do come to an end. The first generation, the one that panicked at Kadesh Barnea and romanticized the food in Egypt, has fallen in the wilderness, just exactly as God said they would.
Yes.
So what happens to the promise now?
Well, God's mission doesn't die with a failed generation. The focus shifts entirely to the future, and we get the second census.
Which finally justifies the title of the book again.
Exactly. We have a second massive counting of the people.
Yeah.
But this time, they're counting a brand new generation. The children of the wilderness, those who literally grew up watching their parents wander, are now adults. And they are standing exactly where their parents stood decades earlier, preparing to inherit the land.
And there's a massive shift in leadership too, right? Moses, the man who led them out of Egypt, is coming to the end of his life. He won't be crossing over into the promised land.
Oh, right.
The baton is passed to Joshua, one of those two original spies who showed faith and said, "Let's go take the land." Passing that mantle must have carried just an incredible emotional weight, because Moses did the heavy lifting for decades, but he has to hand the ultimate victory over to his protege.
It's very poignant, and it underscores the structural brilliance of the book. It is neatly bookended by these two censuses. You have the first census, representing the old generation that failed to enter the promise due to their slave mindset.
Right.
Then you have the second census, representing the new generation that is rising up to fulfill it. Moses, stepping aside for Joshua, is the final transition from the era of wandering to the era of conquering.
And the text spends these final portions practically buzzing with anticipation. Like you read it and you can just feel the momentum shifting. They're physically mapping out the inheritance. They are dividing the land among the tribes on paper, preparing for battles, and establishing a justice system for when they settle down.
Right. They set up things like the cities of refuge.
Oh yeah, the cities of refuge, which is an incredibly progressive ancient system. For anyone who hasn't heard of it, cities of refuge were specific towns designated as asylums for people who committed accidental manslaughter.
Yes.
Because in the ancient Near East, if you accidentally killed someone, their family's avenger of blood had the cultural right to hunt you down and kill you.
This is a brutal system.
Yeah. So the cities of refuge ensured that justice was handled properly through an actual trial, rather than just falling victim to mob revenge or a blood feud. So they are really laying the groundwork for a civilized, functioning society.
They have transitioned from a wandering mindset back to an inheritance mindset. And it proves a critical theological point that the sources really want to drive home. Human unbelief has real consequences. The older generation experienced discipline. They wandered, and they missed out on their inheritance. That loss was real.
Yeah.
But human failure can never make God unfaithful. Leaders change, generations pass away, but God's purposes continue unstoppable. The discipline achieved its purpose, and the new generation is ready to embrace the mission.
So what does this all mean for us? Because we've gone from a massive grid of tents centered around a tabernacle, to a panic attack at the border, to bronze snakes, talking donkeys, and finally to a brand new army ready to march. How do we synthesize all of this ancient history for someone listening today?
I think we synthesize it by looking at what the text demands of its readers, regardless of the century. The life application here is incredibly direct. First, focus on God, not the giants. Faith doesn't mean ignoring the hard reality in front of you.
Right.
It means viewing that reality through the lens of God's capability. And second, stop letting complaining be your default response to difficulty.
Because complaining isn't just venting. In this context, complaining is really just the vocalization of unbelief. It's looking at the manna in your life, the daily, unglamorous provision, and saying you just don't trust the process.
That's a great way to put it. And finally, remember that the wilderness is not the destination. The wilderness is a transition. It's a place of shaping, testing, and sometimes necessary discipline. But it is not the end of the story. The promised land is the goal.
The wilderness isn't the end. I want to bring this right down to where you, the listener, are sitting right now. Think about the wilderness periods in your own life. The waiting, the frustrating delays, or the seasons that feel like discipline and endless wandering. Are you viewing those moments as a graveyard of failed plans, just like those 10 fearful spies who could only see giants? Or can you shift your focus? Can you see that wilderness as the necessary preparation ground, the place that is raising up the new generation of your own life's purpose? When you look at the terms and conditions of your current struggles, what are you focused on? Just like those ancient tribes waking up in the desert every single morning, what is at the center of your camp right now?